Education rights organizations are monitoring government's compliance with an important school meals court judgment. The court decision last month ruled that the National School Nutition Programme must resume with immediate effect. That's after it was suspended at the start of the coronavirus lockdown. And that's regardless of whether pupils have returned to school or not. Let's get the latest now from Leanne Jansen-Thomas from Equal Education. She joins us via Skype from Cape Town. Leanne, thanks so much for joining us this morning. It's just been a couple of weeks since that court decision was handed down, but it's been about a week or so since President Ramaphosa announced that government schools are to close for certain grades yet again for a month or so in the hopes that we can get past the peak of the coronavirus pandemic. I spoke to the Education Department from Gauteng last weekend. They said they had plans in place to ensure that that nutrition program continues, even though certain grades have been closed down for normal schooling. According to Equal Education in Section 27, and according to that court decision, you're supposed to be getting reports from government every 10 days, I think it was, about how that is going. What have you heard just a week on from that presidential decision?
Morning. So the judgment from the North Gauteng High Court was that regardless of whether learners are at school or at home, they should have access to these meals because, as you know, for many of these learners, it's the only meal that they would receive in a day. And there was a supervisory order that was handed down by the court because the judge recognized what she called the administrative chaos in provinces. And so the need for the court and for Equal Education Section 27 and the Equal Education Law Centre to be able to monitor implementation. At the moment, we are still receiving reports from caregivers, from ordinary community members, and from Equal Education's learner members that still there are schools where meals are not being delivered. And that is incredibly distressing. At least 30% of our population are suffering from severe food insecurity. The lockdown has undoubtedly horribly exacerbated food insecurity and hardship within households. And we're extremely concerned that there is a lack of communication from the provincial education departments, firstly, on telling school communities, this is when you can collect food, this is the time, and this is the date. And that it's simply not happening. So there was a report in the Northwest, from the Northwest, for instance, that food was not being collected. But what have the education departments done to ensure that school communities know that they are able to receive these meals? On the other hand, there are learners who have gone up to 4 months without being able to access these meals. There are cases in Gauteng, in Limpopo, in the Eastern Cape. Just yesterday, I received a phone call from someone who wanted to know on what day and what time are these meals delivered at school, because I went there and there was nothing and I don't know who is the person to contact from the education department. So certainly a lot more work needs to be going into the implementation and compliance with this court order.
Now, obviously, as you have now reporting back, and we've heard this before, communication is obviously an issue. How big of a problem is it that in certain situations, kids are expected still to travel to school to collect those meals? Because we all know that so many children across this country have to travel a long way at great cost, which is even more difficult now if you look at the repercussions of the pandemic. How big of an issue is that as well?
Absolutely, and Equal Education, as you know, has been engaged in the scholar transport campaign for many years because we recognize how difficult and dangerous it is for learners to get to school. So when President Ramaphosa made the announcement that in compliance with the court order, government would need to continue to provide these meals, Equal Education then said, scholar transport cannot be a hindrance to this. As far as we are concerned, scholar transport must be provided for learners to be able to collect food. And if that is not possible, then learners must be able to collect food at their nearest school. and the Gauteng Education Department, for one, is implementing that. And so we don't expect that there should be any logistical problems. And certainly the Department of Basic Education, when it filed its papers with the courts, did not cite that there would be any logistical or practical reasons why it couldn't fully roll out the school feeding scheme.
Okay, we're going to leave it there, but we certainly are going to stay on the story along with you. Thank you so much for that update. Leanne Jansen.